समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या? समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
This is a very interesting and important day for us to look at what's happening at ISRO and through that at India's space program. I said important and interesting because while there is something that's come up that looks like underlining a crisis, a brewing crisis at ISRO, particularly with the departure of 120 scientists, that is scientists in category A and above. That's a big loss, and many of them have left from critical missions. This has also come at a time when quite a few of the mission heads or project heads have retired and gone home. Succession is a good thing, but at the same time, this looks like too much transition and too much of talent loss. That's one. The other reason why this is such an important and interesting moment, that's because India's first proper orbital rocket launch is going to take place this Saturday. The window for this launch was between 12th of July and 4th of August. Unless something changes or weather intervenes, this is now going to be launched this Saturday. So this is being recorded on the eve of this big initiative. This will be the first Indian fully private sector launch by the company called Skyroot. You know something about that company through many sources, but also through the print, because one of the founders, Pavan Kumar Chandana, was on Off the Cuff. He was our Off the Cuff guest in Hyderabad just a couple of weeks back. I will also share with you a link of that conversation and also a couple of pictures of my own visit to their campuses. Now, first of all, the good news is that the initiative that came up with the new space policy in 2020, that is now bearing fruit. The new space policy said in general that going ahead, ISRO will become more focused on science missions, going to the moon, Mars, Venus, sending a human being into space, also in the course of time developing reusable rockets, then sending human beings to moon by 2040 and so on. So ISRO was supposed to shift to those big headline programs or science projects. Whereas the other day-to-day stuff which is very important and very critical for the country, for communication, for farming, for monsoon prospecting, weather prospecting, and most importantly, for defense, a lot of that will pass into the hands of the private sector. So a lot of the satellite making will go to the private sector and launches will also go to the private sector. As we speak now, two Indian companies, Agnikul and Skyroot, they have in the past launched suborbital rockets. So rockets that go up to, say, in case of Skyroot, 80 kilometers, just below the orbital altitude. That is to test technologies. Agnikul did that in 2024. So you can imagine that maybe in a year or so, they will also be carrying out full-fledged launches. And also many Indian companies have made their satellites. 5 of them have launched their satellites. I don't want to say regrettably, but the fact is all 5 were launched with SpaceX rockets. These are Elon Musk's rockets on payment. He now provides very cheap services. So these 5 satellites had gone on his rockets. The latest one, that is Drishti from a company called Galax I, that was the most important. It was also the biggest so far. It was a 190 kilogram satellite. It was meant to do a lot of things. It had an all-weather radar and optical data, and also the ability to fuse the two, the data from radar and optical data, and to fuse this at a sub-optical level. Mumbo jumbo apart, what this means is that this will give you very granular data and situational awareness. No wonder then that its primary customer for its services was Indian Air Force. And this was to be done through a company that ISRO has floated, that is New Space India Limited, NSIL, that is supposed to do the commerce for the services or the data that these private satellites will produce. However, Drishti did not last out. It had technical issues, ran into a solar storm. That's gone, but more satellites will come. The fact, however, is that 5 satellites between Jan 25 and May 26 have all been launched by Elon Musk's SpaceX rocket. So Jan 25, Firefly Phase 1, company called Pixel. Then Scott, also the same rocket, I presume the same day, company called Digantara. These are all Indian companies who are making these satellites. Then once again, Pixel satellite Firefly Phase 1 in August 25. Then Leap 1 from Dhruva Space, also on August 25. Then May 26 this year, Drishti. That was the most promising satellite. Unfortunately, it's not effective anymore. The fact, however, is that for more than a year, India has not done a successful launch with Indian satellites on it, and nobody's complaining loudly, but everybody is worrying about it, particularly the armed forces, because we might remember that within 8 days of the end of Sindoor, that is within 8 days of May 10, on May 18, India launched a PSLV rocket that was carrying an EOS, Earth Observation Satellite, which was meant to help India's defense, because many gaps in satellite surveillance and coverage had been discovered during Sindoor. It was also found that all of the Chinese satellite resources were available to the Pakistanis. That's the reason this launch was carried out so quickly after Sindoor. That failed. After that, in January this year, another PSLV failed. That was carrying a DRDO satellite, again a very vital satellite. Those are things that we've spoken about in the past. We'll share with you links of those episodes of Cut the Clutter. Now, both of these rockets failed because of third stage anomalies, and looks like ISRO now says, and the government sources say, that they figured out what the anomaly was, and in the course of time, launches will resume. However, remember that India had planned, if you look at the annual plan, India had planned 13 launches this year. More than half the year is gone now. Only 1 launch has taken place from ISRO, and that too failed. Just for comparisons, please keep in mind the fact that China is carrying out now 90 to 100 launches every year, and these are big rockets. In fact, Pakistani satellites are also going up, barring one on Chinese rockets. And they have 25 categories of rockets. So they are launching all the time. The US, where satellite launch is almost all gone in the private sector now, 190 in a year. And those are super big rockets. And as you know, Elon Musk is now using reusable rockets. So even his charges, the expense or the tariff for launching satellites is now much cheaper, because you can use the first stage rocket. Yet again, China has just displayed that. India has sanctioned a project for a reusable rocket that was sanctioned 2 years back, but that is supposed to see the light of day in 2032. That's the target. But 90 to 100 Chinese launches, 190 American launches. Europeans are laggards. European Space Agency, ESA, 7 to 8 launches, and I see a lot of writing and discussion in European papers, Western press in general, about how Europe got left behind, they got lazy. India has averaged 5 to 6, but the way things are, while the ambition and the plan was 13 this year, we are now well into the second half of July, and we have only one, which is a failure. The issue I see is that ISRO has now dedicated itself to science missions. So Gaganyaan, uncrewed Gaganyaan, which was to go up in 2027, it's now delayed. Chandrayaan 4, which was the lunar return mission, 2035. Bharatiya Antariksh Station, Indian Space Station, 2035. Then sending a human space flight 2040, Mars orbiter mission 2 or Mangalyaan 2 2030, and the Venus mission Shukrayaan by 2028 looks like that will be delayed also. And those will be launched on much bigger rockets. It does seem that while it shifted attention to that, today's roti dal or sambar rice business was forgotten or given less importance. And that's the reason critical launches are not taking place. And India is developing a satellite gap with China, of course, but also with Pakistan. And now we are in a situation where our own communication satellite constellation Navik is now dead in the water. New one will take at least a year before we start building it up. And can you imagine fighting even a 3-day skirmish with Pakistan, where GPS could be denied to you in a situation of GPS denial, and it could be denied to both sides. GLONASS, Russians, will you count on them? Russians could come under pressure. Then what will you do? You can't go blind into a war like that. The Pakistanis will always have access to Baidu. So India is really lagging in the area of space. That is not a script anybody had written for 2025-26. That's obviously something that we need to think about. In the middle of all this, we are watching these departures from ISRO. So 120 have left from ISRO from its various labs over the past year. And while the government is putting on a brave face, the minister Jitendra Singh said, people come, people go, kitne aate hain, kitne jate hain, there are people available. After all, S. Somanath, who was the chairman of ISRO when Gaganyaan was visualized and the work was done, he's now gone in retirement. In fact, he's become non-executive chairman with Agnikul, which is one of these private sector companies. This was set up by graduates of IIT Madras. He's gone there. He's also advisor to some other companies. So the minister says, just like that, people will go and people will come in. But 120 is worrying, because if it wasn't worrying, then government would not have issued this memorandum. This memorandum or this order has been sent out to ISRO by Government of India and this is from the Ministry of Space, Department of Space, and it basically says that any resignations now of Group A scientific and technical personnel, that any resignations or VRS, voluntary or early retirement requests from any scientists cannot be accepted at the lab level or at the institution level. These have to come to Department of Space in Delhi. The minister said, I'm not shutting the doors. This is just a way of ensuring that decision on these cases can be taken by more mature minds. However, to me, it sounds like bolting the doors, because your people want out. You bolt the doors. Now, what happens as a result? While you want to stop people from going out, you also want to attract new good people. If you shut the doors on those that are there, the new ones who are looking at ISRO as an option, who are curious, who have a scientific mind, exploratory mind, they might think that if I go to ISRO, I get trapped there, and then other opportunities are not open to me. Remember, the two founders of Skyroot, for example, both joined ISRO after IIT, and then after working there for a few years, left and set up Skyroot. So if you start putting these adangas in the way of people who want to branch out from ISRO, learn at ISRO, branch out, take the knowledge, do entrepreneurial things, or work for companies that are doing entrepreneurial things, then this runs contrary to the philosophy of taking space into the private sector, or the idea that ISRO should do the scientific work or the big science projects. Now, how does India catch up? I'm sure wise people, much wiser people than us, are working at it. And in the middle of this come these departures. Now, these departures is something that maybe government should have thought about when they opened up space to the private sector. When you opened up banking to private banks, I am sure so many of India's nationalized banks would have lost good staff to the private banks. Private banks would not go and invent people suddenly to set up big businesses. So when private sector comes in, private sector salaries are better, private sector has stock options, private sector has different kind of lifestyle, different kind of working conditions, different quality of office spaces as well. So you can imagine that many people would found that interesting. This is not very different from what's happening, say, and we had a story on this just a while back, say to All India Institute of Medical Sciences or other medical colleges where the best doctors are now leaving to join private hospitals. And one of the reasons there also is salaries, working conditions, meritocracy, the lack of meritocracy, promotions to the deserving, etc., etc. Many people want out of the government sector for a combination of these reasons, either one or a couple or a combination of these reasons. So maybe government should have known that private sector will also draw talent from ISRO, and they could have done something about ISRO for working conditions, salaries. In the past also, ISRO has had attrition, but not at this level. Between 2012 and 17, for example, only 289 had left. Only 289 had left. We are only looking at scientists at grade A and above. 2018 to 22, 381. You can see attrition has gone up a little bit. 2023, 24, 54 in a year. And now 25, 26, 120 have left. That looks like a really hard blow given the fact that already ISRO is carrying a lot of vacancies. If we look at ISRO's staff strength now, it is 14,637. The sanctioned strength is 18,142. So the vacancy is 2,613. According to Minister Jitendra Singh in a reply in Parliament, ISRO has initiated recruitment for 1,449 posts. In science and technology category, vacancy was 1,636 personnel, of which recruitment process is on for 1,261. In the administrative category, the sanctioned strength was 4,034, 3,057 are working. I don't know how many will be filled, but the key thing is to get those scientists in place, because administrative staff is there to support the scientists. Once again, see how this staff is divided, because ISRO has many centers. ISRO has many centers, many different centers. There is Vikram Sarabhai Space Center at Trivandrum, 4,577 people. Space Application Center at Ahmedabad, which is where Vikram Sarabhai started, 1,861 people. UR Rao Satellite Center at Bengaluru. Now this is interesting. This is 1,339 people. That is one of the key facilities of ISRO, and in the past has had a very low attrition rate. 80 of the 120 scientists who have left now come from this center, UR Rao Satellite Center at Bengaluru. Then there is Satish Dhawan Space Center at Sriharikota, where the launches take place, 2,125, and Liquid Propulsion Center at Bengaluru and Trivandrum, 1,294. And since I mentioned the Satish Dhawan Center, Professor Satish Dhawan, one of the greatest titans of Indian space program, I had the honor of delivering the 2018 Satish Dhawan Memorial Lecture at JNSR in Bengaluru. That is Jawaharlal Nehru Center for Advanced Scientific Research. That, in fact, is the institution where Professor CNR Rao has been working, who was given the Bharat Ratna, and I also had the joy and privilege of hosting him on Walk the Talk, which we recorded on his campus. Now, where does ISRO get its people from? The one former ISRO chairman, Somanath, he had actually complained that ISRO struggles to get graduates from IIT because IIT graduates get much higher offers from the private sector. So that was a struggle, and that struggle has gone on for so long that ISRO actually has set up its own institution, that is the Indian Institute of Space Science and Technology at Trivandrum, with a complement of 174 admissions every year. And the courses they offer are a bunch of them, but the most popular ones are BTech in Aerospace Engineering and Electrical and Communication Engineering. This is part of the JEE examinations, and bunch of people opt for Indian Institute of Space Science and Technology. There, those that get scholarships or free ships make a commitment to work for ISRO. Now the same ISRO will be competing with the private sector, and that's why it becomes important for us to look at the salary structures a little bit. We know that government doesn't pay that much. It can only pay a fraction of the private sector, but still, if you go back to that off the cuff with Pawan Kumar Chandana, he tells you that when he and his partner graduated from IIT Kharagpur and joined ISRO, they joined at a salary of just 35,000 rupees. That's a very low salary, but people go to ISRO for curiosity and to learn. Then in the course of time, if they want to go out and do something in the private sector, when the government's own philosophy is to move space activity to private sector, in fact, it's for that the government set up an organization called InSpace, which is Indian National Space Promotion and Authorization Center. That's a single window organization to give you clearances, etc., also help you get things together, maybe even resources. That is headed by a former, very respected corporate leader, Pawan Goenka, who used to be CEO with the Mahindra Group. The government, therefore, in a way, is caught in a situation of its own making. It wants the private sector. Private sector needs talent. Government's got talent. Government is not paying its talent enough. In any case, these are young, ambitious people, so they are going out, and government then says, we have too few people. So what does the government do? Remember that old story, to one with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Government uses the hammer and slams the door shut. What the government could do, on the other hand, is to budget more money for ISRO. If you look at ISRO's budgets from 23-24, in dollar terms, the budgets haven't gone up at all. In fact, if at all, they've come down. So 23-24, 12,543 crore rupees. Next year, 13,042 crore rupees. Then 13,416, and now 13,705, which is $1.64 billion. If you go backwards and convert each year's budget into dollars, on that year's dollar value or rupee value, you will find that ISRO budget either has remained stationary or it has marginally declined over time. That is not something that shows sufficient commitment from the government to ISRO. And I know comparisons are not always straight lines, there are complexities, but if India's space budget is about 1.6 billion, the US is 25 billion, besides the fact that they have Elon Musk, who's now raising so much money, going into $1 trillion plus valuations and spending that on space. China spends 20 billion. Even Japan has 4 to 5 billion. Then even in terms of associating with the private sector, there are other models. For example, there are other models. For example, if you look at NASA follows an open door policy. So you can have a hybrid job. You can work at NASA, you can work outside, and you can move in and out. Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore, for example, they were from NASA. They helped Boeing Starliner. And similarly, Anil Menon, who was a SpaceX scientist, he became a NASA astronaut. These are names we are more familiar with. And NASA, in the course of time, has become more of a science mission. They've gotten out of the business of launching satellites. Now, we can't take this discussion forward without talking about salaries a little bit. I told you that Pawan Kumar Chandana said that he and his co-founder joined ISRO at a entry salary of 35,000 rupees. Who can you hire for 35,000 rupees today, you tell me? Or maybe 50,000 rupees. Somebody with an IIT degree? It's challenging. But then see what happens. If you become chairman of ISRO, you will still be sitting at around 2.5 lakh rupees plus DA, etc. DA is now, I think, about 103% of your basic pay, but maybe 5 lakhs, 5.5 lakhs for their house, a car, a driver, stuff like that. How much more can any of these people get in the private sector? It's the same comparison that you would use between, say, a professor and head of cardiology at All India Institute of Medical Sciences, and the chief cardiologist, say, at Medanta or an Apollo or Max or any of the other big corporate hospitals. So you can't reach quite there, but you still need to improve salaries for technical people in India, people with technical skills. Question is often raised, how come so many doctors, MDs from MDs from AIMS or IIT graduates, how come so many of them are appearing for UPSC and becoming IAS and becoming officers in IAS, or even services other than the IAS, services that you join through UPSC? And why do doctors or IIT graduates go towards UPSC? Because not only is this a confirmed job, but in most of these jobs, most of these appointments, there is the prospect of a post-retirement sinecure as well. That's almost become a norm now. And you know what? Salaries may be similar to what you have in government service as a scientist or as a doctor. But should you be so inclined, there are opportunities to earn a little bit more money on the side, or maybe more than a little bit more money besides your wages. I'm not saying everybody does it or that most people do it. In fact, most people don't do it. But to those who might be inclined, there is an opportunity. In science, you do science, so it is better to pay people more there. That's because given the way the system is in India, there is much less incentive for good people to stay back in their specialized areas, because if they work in the government system, because that's where, say, the science mostly is, if they work in the government system, then in principle, they will all be paid a little bit less, maybe a rupee less than the Cabinet Secretary of India. And the Cabinet Secretary, according to the 7th Pay Commission, grade 18, which is the highest grade under the 7th Pay Commission, is 2.5 lakh rupees plus DA plus house plus etc. 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 So there is need going ahead maybe to liberate technical salaries for genuine technical personnel from this Sarkari straitjacket. It will not happen. It will not happen in the 8th Pay Commission also. And that's why government institutions will continue to bleed talent. And maybe it's not such a bad thing, because this will go in the private sector. And as we see happening with space now, many new flowers will bloom outside. So these are areas of challenges, trouble and crisis in space. Now, having said all that, once again, let's get our smiles back on, because this new launch is taking place, and hoping and praying it all works out right. And on that note, I will also give you the names of some new generation private sector space companies that have come up in India under the new space policy. So congratulations, In Space, Pavan Goenka. Dhruva Space, founded 2012. In fact, before this policy by Sanjay Nekanti, an aerospace engineer. Bellatrix Aerospace in Bengaluru, founded 2015. Rohan Ganapati and Yashas Karanam from IIT Madras. Agnikul Cosmos, we spoke about it earlier. Srinath Ravichandran, IIT Madras, and Moin SPM, former ISRO scientist. Skyroot Aerospace, we all know much about it. 2018, founded by Pavan Kumar Chandana and Naga Bharat Dhaka from IIT Kharagpur. They are doing their first orbital launch. Digantara, 2018, founded in Bengaluru. Anirudh Sharma, Rahul Rawat, Tanveer Ahmed, all aerospace engineers. Then Pixel, founded in 2019. I listed 2 of their satellites launched on SpaceX. Pixel, founded in 2019 in Bengaluru by Awais Ahmed and Kshitij Khandelwal. Bits Pilani, dropouts. That might just turn out to be the most successful if we go by recent record. Dropouts. Nothing succeeds like dropouts. Then Galax I. Galax I is the one that launched Drishti, the satellite which ran into trouble. Founded 2021 by Suvash Singh, Daniel Chavda, Pranit Mehta, and Kishan Thakkar and Rakshit Bhatt. And all 5 of them also, Galaxy I, all 5 of them also are IIT Madras. So IIT Madras has actually been the most entrepreneurial of all IITs. I see also Kanpur doing a lot, but IIT Madras maybe started this much earlier. CISR radar founded in Kolkata. Good, you see something founded in Kolkata, 2022 by Tapan Mishra, who's a former ISRO scientist. So I suppose some of the people leaving ISRO now are setting up these companies, which is not a bad thing. They are not going to SpaceX. Take Me to Space, founded as recently as 2024 by Ronak Samantre, computer science engineer. And then there are others, Cosmoserve Space by Chiranjeevi Phanindra, former ISRO and IIT Madras graduate. His company works on collecting and clearing space debris. So that's a super specialized operation. If you look at all this, you can see that while there are areas of challenges and there are things to worry about, at the same time, 100 flowers are also beginning to bloom. So let's also look at the positive side of the space life and wish Skyroot the best. And I hope that by the time you are watching it, we are all celebrating a successful launch.